identify some.
May be interested in joining Rutland and written some communications. It also gives some recommended steps from the Rutland
To form a Rutland district, and then
to assist in identifying and creating opportunities. The existing conditions that we found while we were going about the study as it exists today. It's been well developed audience. It's very impressive. A number of years ago, I participated in a study that really at that time there was so much
I'm sorry, I have a hard time hearing. Can I close the door?
Technically, it's an open meeting, so if you want, do you want to come over here?
That's fine. There's so much noise over there.
You want to come over here?
That's fine. I'll
let's keep it over. And then, all of the, we found all of the dispatchers very proficient.
all of the systems, all of the dispatch protocols, and they, in my opinion, they went beyond what was required. It's a good thing, for the existing structure that is used is one that's traditionally seen as an intermunicipal agreement. All of the employees are employees of the town of Rutland. It's covered by the administrative policy procedures. From payroll, finance, as well as any other requirements as created by the IMA. Covered by Chapter 40, Section 4A. Rutland has, in my opinion, two very good elements of it, which is also in a district model. It is one is the operations board. It's advisory, both of these boards are advisory boards. Which means you make recommendations, but you don't necessarily make the decision. The operation board provides all review of all policy changes, as well as providing feedback on the center's performance. And second of all, is that the administrative board is responsible for reviewing all the department's IMA and budget elements. And again, it's advisory, so making decisions of it. Also implementing information, feedback, cost-sharing is based on population, which is traditional. What we found is one of the elements is staff and some make a ratio of staff and population is always there's a procedure within the IMA that really covers all of it. Budget to a final budget agreement is the proposed budgets for the upcoming fiscal year are presented and reviewable in the regular budget process. Everybody knows exactly what their charge is going to be.
Yes.
And that was the first time they had done this. We were able to get some development money to enlarge the number of positions and adding additional positions in the
it was, we looked,
between 7 and 8 communities that requested information.
regarding
Their interest
in joining
Rutland, they have advised that they want to join a regional emergency communications district.
There's a difference between a patio and a deck, why don't?
What I found was, in our opinion, it's feasible to transition from our current hosted regional emergency communications center to a district model. The district model, in essence, is a regional government entity for providing emergency communications. When you have this hosted model, that's covered by the IMA. Massachusetts, a number of years ago, passed a law that allowed the development of a regional emergency communications district to establish the as a regional entity. It's
in
as part of our project, we developed a draft district agreement, and we also provide some of the steps that are necessary to finalize
the town
administrators. They finalized the agreement.
plan
To start it's really up to the administrators to identify the exact wording plans. So and we also use Steve Foley is going to be, he's going to talk a little bit about any potential sites, facility analysis necessary.
identify
Any future site for regional district. If it's going to be a number of
join.
The biggest difference between the two is the operations, particularly where you have an advisory operations board. In a district, there is an administrative board that's made up of all of the town administrators. An operations board is generally made up of all of the police chief, fire chief, and the other public safety personnel within the community. And then there's a finance committee that's made up of all of the treasurers from all of the so specifically, there is a model that has been created for regional dispatch district. The differences between the two, between the host and rec, and the district model is really pertains to administrative on a regular basis. It's the administrative functions. Right now, everything is done through Rutland. There's the host. And then the district, they have to identify either through relationships and agreement with the communities to provide everything from there's a step-by-step process that's really established in the law that for creating regional dispatches. One is the completed feasibility study. Well, in essence, that's what we are doing. I don't believe any of So, the second element is establish an agreement with all the 911. That's really what was in that agreement is the governor's agreement for the district. And that's the each community. Once that is approved, then it's finalized and signed. To raise state 911 they make sure that every element is required. So that's the review process that they go through. And then once that has been established, and you identify any potential sites for the facility itself, then you can see the state 911 development plans constructed with this arrangements. Cover the
Sure, just a couple of quick points. You hear me all right, sir?
Yes, I hear you.
Okay. Just check.
Anything else to start with?
A couple of things that we looked at. We used a bunch of different a couple of applicable NFPA National Fire Association standards. Facility. So the standard itself lays out the requirements for a facility. We're not talking about the state building code or the state fire protection code, local zoning laws, planning laws, requirement for the actual facility itself. It's a design phase. And so it lays out security related issues, all the ADA requirements, and looking at staffing, not only initial staffing, but potential for expansion as relates to the number of personnel that are going to be working in that. Dispatchers, telecommunicators, as well as the administrative staff, looking at not only the functional areas for the telecommunicators, but the break rooms, the training room, administrative offices. Professional qualifications for so, I'm going to date myself. I used to be the fire chief in Ashburnham, if anybody knows where that is. We had a one-man or one lady dispatcher for police, fire, so, she would be doing not only admin work, but also trying to keep track of the police chief and running EMS, et cetera, et cetera. And Mrs. Smith calling to say her power was out. And Mrs. Jones calling to say there's a vacancy in her neighborhood. So how do you prioritize all those calls? So the reason I bring that up is when you look at the statement, a lot of people would look at it and say, oh, how many 911 calls do you get? The state keeps track of that. The Emergency Communications Center keeps track of that. What's really important is the total calls. Police officer has a vehicle stopped at the looking for a vehicle. In fact, it's in a requesting So. Dispatch position, there is a, C number one is recommendation on the, district facility, having this site assessed and rated as functional site, it also meets the requirements of the district facility. This administrative board, to be approved to rate and approve the site as a location for the district facility, and also to, identify potential areas as well as, conduct a feasibility study, adding when you do that, again, it's population, cost of service that have to be factored into the staff. So, and that which is really
So, Mike, I don't know if this is for you, Mike, or yourself. How do you base your staffing level? Is it population per town right now? So is your dispatch staffing based on the population you're serving? And you must have a minimum staffing level, correct? 2 every shift right now for the 5 towns?
Yep.
Okay. So that's, how many shifts do you have? Other than three, what are they, 10, 8, 12-hour shifts, what are they? 8 hour?
8-hour shifts. Yep.
Talk so quietly.
Including management, aka yourselves. Counts towards those staffing members.
Yeah, 'cause I know you step in when needed, obviously, and so as well do you. All right. I know there's another question here, I just gotta remember it. I'm old, getting older, so.
I know what that's like, by the way. You know, anytime, if you, I know that Mike's gonna document any question anybody has. Steve and I use.
I'm just kinda shocked that's all you have for staff right now, personally, but, I mean, it's like any other job, right? I mean, in the service industry that you're servicing, that there's times when you're gonna get overloaded with calls and, how is that handled?
Currently, right now, the service that I've been changed, shows that.
Excuse me, could you speak up?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you.
So the current, ACO retains survey that we do, which takes into factor call volume, calls for instance. So ultimately, the, formulas that they just put in, it's extremely short, like this. We should have.
So, with the 5 communities now, what's your total number of dispatches? Cause I mean, you got people who work certain shifts and somebody's gotta cover their days off, so, I mean, if you have 2, 3, and 2, in a 24-hour shift, so you must have, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, what do you got? 12, 16 people that, for that?
12 full-time, and we have 1, 2, 3 part-timers.
Okay.
Are you
Now-
still experiencing the level of difficulty hiring that you were a year or two ago?
So, okay, so I mean, I'm all about staffing levels and this and that. I came from a business that operated 24 hours. Now, if somebody goes on vacation, do you have like a vacation leave staff that fills in, or how does that, or you gotta post it for overtime?
It's unionized.
And,
But on the 3 shifts, our minimum staffing is 2.
Yeah.
So we tend to not backfill that full position.
okay,
Use that.
now, if you have a no-call, no-show, does that person get inversed for the next shift?
There's disciplinary action.
Well, listen, I'm not even talking about the guy, the person doesn't show up, and now this person's waiting to go home. They get forced,
Yeah.
4 hours?
Yep. And we'll force in the next shift.
Oh, so you start calling for standbys or whatever.
Whoever's
Oh, the next shift?
coming in.
See if they come in, if they want some overtime. Force, come in from home?
Yep.
Don't answer your phone. So why would you force somebody to come in from home rather than keep that person that's already there?
We split it.
This is so inclusive.
Okay, alright, so, alright, well, who wouldn't, but,
I agree. I agree.
okay. Now another thing, say we did move forward with this.
Yep.
You add another town, so it's based on population and what, so say you add another town, 8,000, you're gonna need how many more people to cover that call volume?
I couldn't speak to that right now.
Oh,
We have
okay.
to do the
You have to do the formula, obviously you have a formula, sorry, so I'm looking too far ahead.
peak times, yeah. I mean, ultimately, if another community is looking to come in, we're gonna have to do a much deeper.
So, if we did move forward, you have to think about the future,
Yep.
obviously, right? And there's gotta be a formula for that. Okay, thank you, I'll shut up.
So on the siting process, is it presupposed that it's going to be in Rutland, or could it be in any of the member towns? going forward?
It would be any of the member towns.
And how would that affect the makeup in Rutland? They be happy it's gone? Would they hold on to what they have?
And I mean, it's, I would say that it would be, I think.
Because if it's going to expand it,
You want to identify all of the sites, and then you want to assess all of the sites. Rutland had a reason for retaining it if there was a site in Rutland. There's one significant benefit. Rutland is one of the highest sites. All of the communities that are actually part of Rutland, you know, right on the ones that I cite, the ones that Mike has mentioned to me about, you know, for radio coverage, you know, high site, you know, saves on the number of towers that you're gonna have to put up, you know, and siting towers is not an easy thing.
no, but if the intent is to expand into a bigger district,
Exactly.
say you expand with, say, a half a dozen or 8 more towns, that's getting to be quite a large district, where now Rutland's not central to the district, possibly.
No, I mean, it's.
I understand the communication
The only
tower
reason I
things.
mentioned that because I was here a long time ago, and I know
Yep.
that was one of the strengths that it had, because of the, you know, the height, the geographical height. Was really in the high areas here with line of sight to your next tower. So you went straight over the airport and there, it saves on the towers.
I don't know, so just to further elaborate on that, yeah, it's not, as the center, we're not operate anywhere within the district. If, like we're talking about the big communities, if they have their site, there's nothing else holding us here infrastructure wise. Potentially. It's just on the site location of the property.
Yeah, no, I would just think if you're gonna expand the district from what it sounds to however many more towns, obviously you're gonna have a lot more antennas. It's just gonna be all part of the whole process. So the whole technology part of it is gonna change dramatically.
So Rutland sounds good if you expanded in a circle around Rutland, but in your potential opportunities slide here, you're talking Spencer, Southbridge, Sturbridge, Charlton, Auburn, Oxford. Would there maybe be like a second site? Cause those areas are near each other and not really near here. So would there be a case of having like a satellite facility or something?
I guess that's a better way to make my point.
There's a possibility of looking at a brand new site, just a bigger square foot. Roughly 15,000 square feet per facility. And the communities don't have. Quite far, you know, so we can make any, we can dispatch for technically possible if we wanted to from. So there's nothing restricting us.
So, yeah, technology wise.
Correct, the technology's there.
Yeah, okay.
So you're basically saying before the district could be a district, we already have to find a new place to dispatch from.
No, to be a
So potentially for the next 2 to 3 years, we'll be in Rutland. Okay, and so then the district advisory boards, et cetera, those would be the individual responsible for creating, or there will be created a, shall we say, a district agreement that doesn't allow any one town to do X or any 2 towns to do X. There would have to be some sort of a voting process to that. And so I view this, when you put this level of bureaucracy, this is a slow-moving target. And I don't think, next week we're gonna have 15 new communities adding on. So I see this as probably if we were to get involved in this, a district that's relatively static for the next 3 to 5 years. As to how many people, no?
Not after talking to these current communities or subcommunities.
Okay.
No, but a lot of them are looking to move now.
Okay, so basically then, this is not really just for us to talk about. We're basically saying, we wanna get together in a big group, because we're already talking with 5 or 6 others, and they're ready to go, and we need a new place, and so we need to have a 5 to 7 year plan that makes sense, so that we are incorporating all of their needs in with ours. Right? Is that what I'm hearing? Okay, just so I'm on the same page.
So we went through and kind of tailored it to be specific to how things were operating. Because I think recognizing that even if we all voted tonight, which would be great, but if we all voted tonight, not all those communities are going to change. Right? And even if they did, the implementation period to be able to site the new facility, build out the new facility, we're talking probably at least 18 months, maybe if not longer. I think we.
Would you be interested in sharing those with us, just so we would have an idea of what? What is the location of the facility that's pictured here?
Mike, you want to talk about that facility a little bit?
Yeah, I can jump right.
Looks like a school somewhere to me.
It's not a school, I can't remember exactly what they used to produce there. But that facility is technically spoken to, with the capability of putting it on multiple activities. As well as providing necessities for current district staff for future staff as well.
So Dr. Marshall, I just want to make sure that I bring this kind of in your wheelhouse. One of the original, speaking as resident squeaky wheel, Hubbardston was one of the first dominoes that kind of brought this to the attention of Rutland. And I would first and foremost like to thank Town Administrator Skanowitz and the Rutland Select Board for even being willing to talk about all of this and getting us here this quickly. This has all happened in less than a year. We met 2 times in your conference room at Barry Town Hall, and it was a great meeting. We all had a good time. We got things decided really quickly. One of the benefits here for towns like Hubbardston and Barry in your wheelhouse is it would be run like a select board, like a school.
That's scary.
Like a school. Like a school committee, because one of the first initial reactions that the town of Hubbardston Select Board had is, oh, why don't we get a say on their union negotiations? Why don't we get a say on who the director is? Why, like, we're just part of this too. And in addition to giving all of the different towns a fair shake at governance, it takes the burden off of the town of Rutland to bear the weight of this whole operation, which I can only imagine has its benefits and detractions. So by working together, we get to govern it together, and we also get to bear the weight of responsibility together, which I know Hubbardston is willing to do as long as it's A, fair, and B, saves its money. Because that, at the end of this, is all about saving money and being able to work together for a better product for the life-saving services that we are providing here district-wide.
Did the Collins Center take into account, the regional school districts and the issues we're having with budgets? Because the school districts basically consume all available funds, and we run the rest of the towns on the shoestring budget. And I'm sure Hubbardston, Barry, Warren, it's all the same.
I'm gonna try not to take any of this personal.
About 62% of the budget, I think.
No, and that's not a criticism of how it is, but that is how it is. So all of this that you're putting together, I don't hear any mention as you want to do a facility, where are you going to get the funding to do it?
It's a,
This fund's a grandson.
That was my comment. So the main funding mechanism for regional centers and the development of regional centers is through the state 911 program. We are separate from any state appropriation. It's through your surcharge that you see in your phones, your cell phones, your home phone, any device that connects to 911. So my watch, my iPad, my kids have phones, all sorts of things. So $1.50 per month is allocated to the 911 general fund that is, again, separate from any state appropriation. So when you see the governor come down, or the state house come down and say 10% cut across the board, that doesn't affect us because we are separate, completely separate from the state appropriation. Through, like I said, the development grant, it's a competitive grant every fiscal year. Goes out with these regional centers where only the 31 regional centers can apply for it to receive funding. So the funding mechanism, as you're talking about the new building, purchasing the land, building it out, it's completely through that. Again, it's a competitive grant, and the process to apply.
No, I understand all that, but it's not going to be 100%.
Again, it's competitive, so I can't say that it's gonna be 100%, but.
No, I mean 100% paid for.
Could be.
In the past, we've seen that, if you're familiar with West Come out and Chicopee, if you're driving the pike, as you're driving down the pike, you see West facility out there. And that's again one of the benefits of the district model, where now as a district, they can take on collateral, they can take on debt, and it allows us one department to fund these things, to fund the debt service liability, where as opposed to giving a full $10 million upfront, we can kind of afford and go through. Again, I can't reiterate enough, it is a competitive grant, so there are no guarantees, certainly. But that's the main funding mechanism in the grant. There are different priorities. The first priority is an existing regional center that is expanding, taking on more towns. So that's where we talk about the 6, 7, 8. I would love it if 15 communities came on board. Trust me, that would make my job a lot easier. But as far as even if one community comes on, that now brings Rutland or any other regional up to that priority one. We're seeing that currently with the Neshoba up in Devens. They just currently took on Hudson. So they're now from the priority one standpoint, kind of get the first crack at the pot, if you will.
How big is the pot?
So that's decided by the DTC every year, but currently this year and last year was $50 million. Again, each year the DTC on the state level decides the funding mechanism, but it hasn't gone down. Again, this is the funding from us where it's separate from state appropriation. So of that pot, $50 million, whatever is kind of allocated and needed, depending on how many other projects there are across the state, that's where the funds are kind of, again, it's called the development grant because the purpose is to develop regional across the state.
Doesn't seem like a lot of money for a district dispatch. It seems like actually pennies.
Yeah, well, and it's right, that's, I guess, the main funding mechanism for building infrastructure, that sort of thing. Also, there's many different grants within our grants. So there's also the support incentive grant. So each PSAP, each 911 center across Massachusetts with a regional or not receives the support portion from the state highway department, but the regionals can also apply for the incentive portion. And I don't know if the fiscal team gave you any funding projections. So we can get projections and move forward to that. But again, as the regional center, up here real quick, I can see if I can pull it out real quick. I know it's upwards of, again, Hudson just came on board, and I think Neshoba was looking at another community, and I believe there were an additional 600,000 for that larger city, a larger community coming on board. So is that funding mechanism there? We also have the training grant, which currently as a regional center, they're allowed it up to 32 hours. Varies amounts.
we pay for funding for training for the dispatchers. Also, EMD grant, we pay for the EMD, emergency medical dispatching. So there's a lot of mechanisms to kind of fund the operations because on the state level, as you see regionalization come across, we're now down to 199 PSAPs, 199 different 911 centers, where that's the cost savings across for us because that's less funding we have to do for upgrade and keep. We're going to come out with a new next gen 911 system in the near future. So it's kind of the cost savings on our end is to fund it. So there are different mechanisms for.
In a district model, each town gets one vote. Correct.
Yes.
And so the 5 towns that are here are rather rural based, tax base is mostly residents. We quickly become the minority when you add 8 more city-like towns like Spencer, Southbridge, that have a tax base that is much more rich in industry and business. How will that affect the communities like ours down the road?
As someone who likes to say the quiet part out loud, I'm going to just bring this out flat. On our worst day, worst case scenario, we enter this tweener phase and things are the same. Like, in a much better situation, we save some money. The models that the director and Austin were showing me were Hubbardston saving $100,000 annually. Now, that's a lot of money. That is another police officer on the streets. That's another firefighter serving another shift. Like, that's big money. So by utilizing this opportunity to have one vote each, we're essentially stacking the deck by saying, hey, you know what, we were the original 5, it's one vote each, because a model designed by those communities may say, no, Spencer gets 1.5 votes, like a school committee. But here it's 1 for 1 for 1, and it's fair, because I would speak to that smaller communities do have a different voting base than larger communities, but they have the same vote.
It doesn't answer the question though about CapEx purchase and the tax base, how it's funded through the communities. Like a town like Barry or Ocam or even Hubbardston is going to be at a significant disadvantage with capital expenses versus a city like Southbridge.
So if it gets outvoted and they decide to build a fancy
8 to 5 sounds 2/3 to me, you know?
Yeah.
I see where you're going with that. Yeah, because they do, it does put the smaller towns at a disadvantage when it comes to larger towns like that.
But just remember though, that this district board is made up of representatives from your communities. This is not, they're not going out to elections, so they're town administrators.
Administrator, the select board chair, or town board chair. And then finance committee is made up of either the district, the town treasurer or chief financial officer, or in the absence of that, select board chair, chief administrative officer. So those decisions are ultimately made by the communities.
Yeah, but you're looking at adding 6 towns that have a population of over 10,000 individuals. But our towns average about 5,000.
So the addition of your towns is subject to this district board, if approved, 2/3 of the membership has to accept that membership.
Well, so, you know, we're not concerned, because that's something that the district board, I think, would rightfully discuss. I think they're fair points, right? You know, but ultimately, this district, the makeup of this district is, you know, essentially the 5 of us here, 5 towns here, right? So these are important, obviously, considerations, especially when you're talking about, you know, scaling up, whether it's for capital purchases, staffing. Ultimately, you know, the question about the budget, I feel very confident in the 5 of us that we can put together a responsible budget, because I think we're all up against it, for example, this year.
Well, if we,
So if, you know, if ultimately we put together a budget that's irresponsible to each of our towns, it's our fault, right? And we need to be responsible to each of the select boards.
well, I'm kind of looking a little beyond that. If you build a facility, the 5 towns, and then we have other towns that have expressed an interest in joining, how do they buy in? What's the cost to them to buy in for their share of the facility that was built? And what's the reimbursement to the 5 towns to bring
Yeah,
them in?
so I think that the district agreement does not have like a buy-in, for example.
Because I think the expectation is that the level of investment to, procure the facility and, I just build out the facility would be heavily funded, if not significantly, majority funded by, state 911. Right, and, there's precedents that, Peter has just spoken to, and there's other examples of, other districts that have been, either 100% or close to 100% funded by, especially that development grant. The town of Rutland has, I just, want to give a thanks to the select board. We've expended our own ARPA dollars to advance initiatives on behalf of, the hosted model. I think it was $30-some-odd thousand for space needs and feasibility study. We did not go back to the communities to ask for funds to fund that, because we believe in advancing the facility needs of this and ultimately the future district growth. So
Let's ask, is there such a thing? Is there an operational assessment that's annually, tallied or calculated based upon the number of people in their community versus a capital assessment that is spread again across by the number of people in the communities? So there is some reasonableness as to that. So if I'm I know this is silly, the city of Worcester, and I'm on this, they're paying a different assessment, operational assessment, because of the numbers of people that would be calling. And then the capital assessment, whatever small amount or large amount, would be calculated like a regional school assessment, predicated if you're a tiny little Barry, it's a tiny one. If you're Worcester, you're paying a bigger chunk of the capital assessment. So there's an operational assessment annually calculated based upon enrollment, or shall we say number of towns. And then and so then there's also a capital buy-in aspect you could put into a district agreement that's very clear. If you had, self-invested an amount of money, very, very typical and traditional in all regional school agreements. If somebody buys into the district, they pay a chunk of what, the capital costs were that they're going to enjoy. So it's not difficult, and I think it does take away your problems.
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, so just to elaborate, the assessments are done by a population-based formula. So the larger the community come in, the large amount of the operating budget that they're gonna take care of. So it does benefit the smaller communities because it further reduces that. And these 7 communities coming in are all larger than all these 5 communities currently right now.
Regardless of my, size, and I've still got an operational assessment predicated on enrollment, I am all in for that.
I think what I heard earlier is, from this gentleman here, is, so we're the original 5. Is it gonna stay at 5, or is if the town comes in, do they get a vote?
Yeah, that would be the purpose of the district.
Yep, we have to allow them in with the
Vote to allow them in, or to be on the original 5, or on the.
join the district, yeah.
Really? So every town that comes in will get another seat?
It would be 2/3 of the existing seats to allow them in.
So now you get, there's 5 towns here, so now you get 6 big towns that come in.
with really large budgets.
Now we, the little people, and they spend a lot of money in these big towns like crazy, and we can't afford it, cause.
You're only gonna pay your piece.
Right.
For sure.
But your town might not be able to afford that piece at that time.
If the pie gets too big, right?
Right, because that's where I'd like to know the size of this.
So we don't absorb the entire cost of their operations. So in the example of, is it Southbridge, for example, I think, what do they spend, $700,000 a year?
Auburn, 1 million.
Auburn, 1 million. We will, all of a sudden, we wouldn't absorb, the entire staff and the entire operations, right? There's a reason why they want to join as well, is for cost efficiencies. So in the example of, I think it's one of your charts there, you'd see Auburn goes down to, what, $200,000 a year?
Yeah.
Because they're realizing efficiencies by joining a regional operation, right? So they're not hiring a director, a deputy director, supervisors, all these dispatchers. They don't have their own facility that they're paying for. They're joining an existing facility for a much larger cost structure. It doesn't automatically mean that
So they'd essentially
we're
be a substation.
No.
Because they'd maintain their dispatch center still.
No, they're just,
That'd be
You would
decommissioned.
absorb theirs completely.
yes, they would have to no
Decommissioned.
longer have
All
this.
Like what we did in Warren, right?
so they would close.
Now, how does that affect service levels for towns like ours where the call volume's on a minimal basis compared to a town like Auburn?
You gotta increase your staff. like-
So right now, we take about 9,000 911 calls for the 5 towns. Currently, a dispatcher that answers the phone dispatches it out. You kind of see the call from start to finish. The structure of that would change if we got bigger towns. The city of Worcester and bigger cities, how they operate is they have designated call takers, designated police dispatchers, and designated fire dispatchers. It allows us to reduce the number of staffing because you only have a certain amount of people who are just solely answering the call. That goes to the police dispatcher if that's, the call type is for police, they dispatch it out. So in restructuring how we operate within the center, it would allow us, obviously, we're gonna need to hire more people if we got even one town, potentially. But in restructuring like that, it will allow us to, we won't need 12 more people for one more town. If we restructured to call taker, police dispatcher, fire dispatcher, it would allow us to keep staffing, obviously as, I don't wanna say minimal as possible because safety purposes, but we wouldn't need to take everyone that Auburn has and everyone that Spencer has and everyone that Southbridge has. And again, staffing is really contingent on having the real numbers of calls for service.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think the concern is we wouldn't want our residents on hold.
Right, and that wouldn't
increased
happen.
Call
No,
time.
that wouldn't happen.
Everybody would be treated equally, across the board. It's a proven and most reliable, safest method, the way that she just explained, separating it out, to operate at a projected increase that we're looking at, going from 9,000 to roughly 40 to 60,000 calls a year. It's gonna increase the level of service, actually regionalizing, the radio systems. It's just gonna improve. You'll have a single person just focus mainly just on police incidents, where currently right now, we're focused on police, fire, and call taking all at the same time. So you have to be phenomenal at multitasking right now to be in our center to keep all of our responders out in the field safe right now. Breaking it up like that allows you to ultimately reduce the amount of telecommunicators needed or dispatchers needed, to provide a better service out there.
And this would be did I misunderstand? Is this would be the first district model?
The first
hosted
go
move
to
to
it.
a district.
First
There
hosted
is
move.
many of district models currently out there right now, and as soon as I get through some of these slides, a lot of my stuff is gonna relate back to one particular district that we're looking at to kind of follow their structure and model that they currently have right now if we were to move into a district. It's well-run, well-managed currently right now, and is growing substantially.
Is it safe to assume that a call taker makes less than a specialized dispatcher?
So everyone would be cross-trained is how we see it, because if you think about, if you have call-outs, you would need a bucket of people to just be trained on the phones, or a bucket of people to be trained just for police, and a bucket on fire. If everyone is cross-trained when there's call-outs, again, it reduces the staffing because you don't need 25 people that can answer the phone just in case. So we would model it like that. Everyone would be cross-trained.
And then instead of, and we were looking at moving towards 12-hour shifts, moving that way. And then the staff that's currently on the floor would move every 4 hours to a new seat. So
keep
you
their
start
skills up.
you start at 911, in 4 hours you move to police, in 4 hours you move to fire and end your shift on fire, or vice versa, or any other combination. Keeping their skills up and current.
So let's say this happens and you get a bigger community, let me say 12,000 people, 11,000 people. And it goes off their 12,000 people, it goes off their population. So if you had a town of 12,000 or a city or whatever, 12,000, how many more staff members do you need?
It would depend on their call volume, their actual calls for service.
So
there's a lot
would what they get charged per the call volume cover the overhead for the staff that are coming in? Holidays, vacations, medical, dental, whatever else they get?
So
So it's not gonna fall on the other small community towns like us.
Well,
Again-
I would suspect there's gonna have to be language to handle any unionization you have in different communities. You're gonna have to negotiate a single union.
Yeah, it would be
Correct.
just one dispatch
Yeah,
unit.
but I'm saying you may have somebody from East Cupcape coming in that's, organized but with a particular union group. So then the state has, legislation that tells us how we can do, say, that union doesn't count anymore, you're coming here, there's a new union in town.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it becomes, and then becomes the seniority lists and all of that stuff that you have to fight through, but that's really a problem of you guys on the ground. So, this is not a new concept. This is everywhere, other than in New England where we just like to do everything ourselves.
Yeah, and currently, right now, the dispatchers are under, the town of Rutland currently right now. Once, if this
Are they
district.
union right now?
The union, yep. If this district is formed, those dispatchers are gonna have to renegotiate a contract with the district moving forward.
So,
And then any of these communities that possibly would come in would just be part of that,
New
union
contract.
that was negotiated with the current district.
so it was brought up earlier, within the dispatchers, if somebody doesn't show mandatory 4 over,
That's union.
it's union.
Yep.
But having been in a union, I also know it's not mandatory.
So
Is
we've,
that written into your language that it's mandatory?
yeah, we have mandatory forces, and like we have policies for that. We've never had issues with nobody, no call, no showing, but calling out sick, sure. People are forced, like, out of all public safety, dispatch is forced more than the police, more than the fire departments. And everyone shows up. People stay, cause they know that there's a job that
No,
needs to be done.
I just know being in the Teamsters Union, that can be a recipe for failure. If it's not spelled out correctly,
Right, and we haven't seen that issue in our current,
you've been lucky.
Yeah.
Very lucky.
for the 13 years I've been here, we've been perfect.
Could I ask, what's like the next step? Are we just still talking about talking to you? Or are we planning within the next 6 to 8 months to a year to make a move?
So we would like to be a district as soon as possible, because we can't even get letters of interest. Like, if we get a letter of interest from a town, it could move us up on the, development grant, like he was talking, could put us in a better spot. If we don't become a district, then the possibility of taking those towns could go away, because they could either form their own district or go to another regional center.
I think to take a step back and look at how this kind of, the discussion started, the state 911 department was approached by several communities in the area, probably that are listed on the sheet. And part of my special projects is to kind of coordinate with them and show them what options are available. So we did meet with a couple different regional centers in the area, but none in this area are of the district model. And of these communities, that's what they were looking for. Because as it's been brought up before, under the district model, the community coming in, the current communities have more of a say. Right now, it's through the town of Rutland, and however the operation and the admin and the politics of Rutland dictate the center. So these communities looking to do something want that district model. But obviously Rutland currently is not of that district model. So in order to, it's kind of a catch-22. In order to get a new building, to get the funding, to get the priority in the development grant, you need a new town. But in order to get a new town, you need the new district. And the new district, so it's kind of all encompassing.
It's the carrot and the stick approach. This is the carrot fit, part. I got it.
Mike, so, I think what's important to understand here is that this is an option that's being presented, an option in the toolbox. And what this is forward thinking on Mike and his staff to try to create these options for towns. If towns don't wanna, join, that's their prerogative. But it's an option so that this district model, if it was approved, would have access to more state grants, to have access to more resources from state 911, and to have access to, the ability to manage collectively as opposed to just one particular town. But this is again an option that's on the table because of the fact that we are seeing that obviously the assessments, the annual assessments are gonna continue to rise. And in order to try to combat that, and I know Mike's doing as best as he can to combat that. We have to look outside, the scope of things and to try to attract more communities to fund this particular model and this particular approach. So, again, this is an option that's on the table. We could be here 3 years from now, 4 years from now, and we're just, saying, Mike, why is our assessment now $500,000? And we haven't done anything for a district to attract more people, to get that more funding and that more mechanism in there to try to offset some of these assessments. And, assessments are gonna continue to climb as everything else is. And so this is an option that's on the table that we can look at, right, Mike?
Correct, sir.
Okay.
Can I just make
Yes.
kind of a point of order? Can we just move on with the PowerPoint and save the questions to the question and answer section?
Quite all
We're
right.
never gonna make this PowerPoint.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Oh, I don't know what.
We have internet failure, so hold on, I'm just gonna switch the input to see.
That's not a good start.
No, it's not. Good thing we're moving out of Rutland.
Yeah, no, me too.
That's what I don't have on the screen.
There you go.
Okay. Oh, that's odd.
So the good thing is our discussion, I think we've jumped around a lot of these slides. So I think we talked a little bit about the district agreement. So I'll try to be as brief as possible in terms of, so we would establish a district board of directors, which again would be made up of the chief administrative officers, the select board chairs. There would be an operations committee comprised of the police and fire chiefs from each of the communities. Also, one vote per community. And then there's a financial subcommittee, which I mentioned, which has the chief financial officers or treasurers or your designees from each of the communities. With that in mind, those three boards would run the processes that you can all expect. So, district board, hire and fire of director, ultimately approving the budget on behalf of the district. The operations committee serves as the technical liaisons and overseeing the standard operating procedures and policies of the district. And then the financial planning committee would work on developing the budget and oversee, auditing and financial management processes on behalf of the district. So this agreement needs to be formed by all of us. So each of the select boards need to accept the language that you see on the screen here. Very specific, this is the language that needs to be accepted by general law, essentially accepting provisions of general law to form the district. And then that would also then accept the district agreement as proposed and drafted by the administrators.
Austin, can I ask
Yes, sir.
a question that I didn't ask earlier? Is this 5 of 5, 2/3? Like if 4 of the 5
needs to be
communities
unanimous.
say it needs to be unanimous?
That's correct. I think I covered most of our slides, just trying to be brief here. You wanna talk about some of your just sample
I
district
guess,
budgets?
yeah.
Yeah, I can go to yours.
Is it changing? Okay, good. All right,
Go to the next slide.
so just gonna go over a couple sample district budgets. If we were to form a district, and hopefully it'll come back soon. And if we were to acquire, this is all looking at acquiring these 6 communities that we've been talking about all night so far. Like I mentioned before, we're looking at one district to kind of model our district behind moving forward, and that is the Southeastern Massachusetts Regional 911 District, other known as SEMREC. Very well run, currently all staff included, that's approximately 40 personnel, that's including administrative staff as well. And their total operating budget currently right now is 4.7 million, with state revenue coming in from the state 911 department, coming in at an estimate $2.1 million to help offset that operating budget. Going forward, again, this has been sent out, previously, utilizing that same budget model and the same figures. Again, we don't know what these true figures are going to be until we look at a site, look at the call volumes of, we got very, general information from these six. We have to dial into their calls for service, how long everything, takes from start to finish with a call, how many personnel they have on duty at a time, their peak times, their busy hours. There's a lot more that has to go into this to really dial in on what that budget's gonna be. And also having a facility and seeing what those costs are gonna be as well. So again, just roughly taking what Semrec has, and their building is, I believe, over 15,000 square feet, well over it. And the current facility that we're looking at is roughly 18,000. So utilizing that same budget, using the 4.7 and kind of matching what they have for support, I believe our call volume would be fairly close, possibly more than that current center right now. So that support money, again, we won't know that until we have a better idea of who's on board and who's not. So utilizing that, you can see what those potential savings could look like, using that current model, and bringing on 40 personnel.
If you
We're
look
gonna
really
have to- Yeah, look real quick, yeah.
Lacking right now, so.
Not my tech.
With this grant?
Yeah, right. So there is some significant savings for the current 5 communities. And as we talked earlier, a lot of these communities, their population is a lot larger than ours. So they're going to eat up most of that operating budget moving forward. This gets that base model kind of in there. Any future communities coming in, there may not be a need to add any more staffing because we have adequate staffing already. So those communities coming in just further reduces those assessments for the communities in the district. Not saying that if a community comes in that we're not gonna hire someone, but that's the potential possibility. We could possibly take 2 communities in and not have to hire anybody. Yes, there'll be some overhead costs, maybe technology or contracts with CAD vendors that may go up due to them coming in, but they're not gonna be substantial. You'll see savings with some of those communities coming in. If some of these communities are larger and we have to hire staff, yes, there's gonna be a larger overhead, but should disperse appropriately and hopefully continue to reduce assessments moving forward. Just utilizing this one, there is a savings, there is a benefit for all 5 current communities currently right now moving that way.
When do you think the, when you said that there's a savings, the savings would be, over time? For example, something wonderful is gonna happen in FY '26.
Correct,
And
right.
nothing probably in FY '27.
Ultimately, yeah, we have to find that, yeah, we have to find that site, construct a building or renovate a facility.
No one new would be sort of invited or given the option to until such time as we had a facility and.
Correct, yep. And before we get into that, so again,
But, so, while our projector is
there it is.
waking up again, so I just wanna be clear though, just to that question. Forming a district then allows the other communities to also accept the provisions and join the district agreement. That doesn't mean that we would be providing the dispatch services immediately, right? Because of everything you just mentioned and some, but we could potentially expand on paper, right, by having these other communities sign on. But again, we still have to go through the whole process of citing and everything else. So, we could receive I guess maybe the benefit of, and the kudos for expanding without having to provide those services immediately.
So the 5 towns would have to get past this stage, obviously, and vote, and then you could get letters of intent from the other towns?
Yeah.
Correct. Yep.
So what happens if there are 3 or 4 or more towns that they're ready to join?
Like the ones that we've been talking to that wanna join?
Yeah.
Ultimately, we can't accept them right now. There's no possibility with the current facility that we have right now. there may be a possibility of taking a smaller community, because we do have a fourth position, as Tom mentioned earlier, but that is a very limited position right now. It does not have 911, it does not have a full radio console, but could be outfitted to have that. We could get rid of the deputy's office and make that one into another console as well, and us share an office for temporary purposes, and obtain a smaller community. But we're really maxed out in the current facility we need right now, and there's no way of accepting anybody at the current moment. So they would have to be placed on hold with the understanding of a new site being constructed or renovated to accept them in.
And all those towns that we have been talking to, they're aware of that. So even if they, either they potentially come with us and wait, 2 years until we have a new building, I'm just throwing that number out there. Or, if they decided to do something on their own, now it's even further than 2 years because they have to form their district with all these other towns and then put in for a grant that we've already put in for. So they're aware that it's 2-3 years. It'd be quicker to join than it would be for them to form their own.
I would suspect that the state makes some sort of provision for having people lined up. For example, school districts. They know that these 2 towns that haven't been involved in the region before are lined up, they're ready to go. And so there's a commitment that's made by them so that when the state is providing revenues for reconstruction and so forth, those districts are already bought in. Because what
Right.
you don't want to do is take another 115,000 square feet and, they say, hey, by the way, we went with Auburn, they sent up something new. So now you got 2 facilities in Auburn and nobody's looking for us to participate with. So I mean, there's gotta be a way to have a situation where you can line up people and that there can be some sort of a commitment process. Because that would only make sense. Then otherwise we can't plan and they can't plan.
Right.
And the state can't authorize.
And you do see that with communities joining, not just in Rutland and the ones we're talking about here, but across the whole state, where you do see that, where a town will sign on, depending on the situation and the makeup of the town. Either the operation will still continue. We'll use Spencer's, right south of here, for example. So the operation would still continue out of Spencer until such time that Rutland, either the new building or if they reallocate some space within their current center. So the operation would still be local until they can come on. As Mr. Saganowitz mentioned, you do get the benefit though for the development grant. If they sign the district agreement, the letter of intent coming on board, so that opens you up to the additional funding. But again, until such time as they're actually in on the district, the operation would continue there.
Are these other towns, are they on their own dispatch type system right now, so they're not regionalized with anybody else?
Correct, they're their own.
So it's all, yeah.
So it's a race to get them to sign,
I know.
sign the agreement.
Yeah.
Correct.
Sign the agreement, and whoever's at the first of their gate is gonna have their first crack at it.
Because currently, right now, from all the conversations that we have, and I believe Peter can contest to it, is that it's currently these 6 to 7 communities are, currently it's down to us and
Webster Dudley.
South Worcester Regional Dispatch in Webster Dudley. Basically, we're fighting over the 7 right now and trying to persuade them to come one way. So myself and Deputy DeFosse have been meeting with the 6 to 7 communities over the last 3 months, multiple meetings to pitch what we've been working towards a district and hopefully moving towards a district. That's ultimately the first question coming out of all these communities' mouths is, what's your governance?
Are you a district yet? That's all they're
Keep asking.
waiting for.
So that's what they're waiting for, and that's where their buy-in comes in. Where they're gonna buy in is if we're a district. Webster Dudley is not a district right now. I believe they're a hybrid right now. But again, they would have to go through the same process that we're ultimately going through right now with their 2 communities to get both of them to sign on and make a district as well, and then start applying for state grants. I believe we're a little bit ahead of the game due to the development grant that Mr. Kinnis was speaking about earlier. We did apply for funding for design and architectural funding to pretty much produce those plans and buildings to go out to bid for. So we're a little bit ahead of the game. So if we get those we become a district and then we get the commitment from those communities, that technically could bring us up to the priority one that Mr. Kinnis was talking about to better our chances on receiving that grant funding and moving that much closer and getting this process done and possibly constructing or renovating a new building. With that being said,
Just a general question. I have the district agreement that you had emailed us. Why wouldn't you have gone with an intermediate agreement for the 5-member towns to move the ball forward, to get those numbers so that we can present those numbers at town meetings, et cetera, within the communities? Because if we sign this, we're locked in.
So
if we get locked into something we can't afford in any one of the 5 towns, depending on how your numbers come back.
So this just changes the governance model, right? So
I understand that.
So we're not adding any costs in terms of switching to a district tomorrow, right? If everyone signed
The
tonight.
point is, we don't know the cost of what you're going to come up with.
Yeah.
And if we sign this, then we're kind of locked into whatever comes to fruition.
In terms of, expansion, is that what you mean? 'Cause I guess I'm not understanding the question. Maybe someone can help me out.
You're kind of locking us into an agreement that we're gonna participate in. And if they do come into the agreement with us and we expand, we're gonna have to get a new building, a new facility. So now we're locked into paying for that facility, whatever the difference may be. Now, my curiosity with this, you're looking at an 1,800 square foot building, okay? How much is that building gonna cost?
So.
Because that is something we're gonna have to factor in, whether it's through 5 towns, 6 towns, 7 towns. And what we're gonna have to piece in.
I mean, I'm only considering the 5 towns.
So.
Right. Because if we sign this,
we're all locked in.
not knowing any of these numbers, we're locked into whatever.
So this is just like Austin mentioned, this is changing the governance. This is giving the 5 communities ultimate say on the current budget, everything right now. These other communities are not even considered in this district.
I'm not even
They're
worried
coming
about
in after that. We need to be able to come a district to get those numbers from them. They don't want to entertain anything until we're a district, right?
So that's concerning to me because I could tell you right now, 3 of these towns have extremely high call volumes and you're gonna require a lot of people to take their calls. You're not gonna be able to just put on 1 or 2 more dispatchers. These are full-time dispatch positions for these towns.
So again, did you have something?
I think we're talking about 2 different things here. I think your question is for the current 5 towns, correct? So my understanding is that signing this district, nothing's gonna change. The operation isn't gonna change. Your assessments that you're currently paying aren't gonna change along those lines. It's just the actual governance. Now you just get a say at the table, because currently it's Rutland. Or whatever Rutland kind of says for the operation, whatever Rutland says for the budget, then it's kind of divvied
No,
out.
but it sets it up for a vote going down.
Which now you,
in the future.
under a district, you will have a vote to speak to. You'll have your finance.
To a new facility
vote now,
or
correct.
to.
Currently, you don't have a vote. It's
Right
whatever.
Right now, it's just,
they say.
pretty much what the Rutland Select Board decides for the operation levels. And that's, I think, that's why, and
That's why
to
we
the,
started this.
the administrator from Hubbardston's point, right, is this was some of the feedback from several years ago, is they weren't happy with the way that our current structure and our current municipal is structured. So that's why I think we're looking at this
No,
model.
I'm only looking forward as to how this is gonna be presented within the towns, to fund whatever the increase is going to be. And those are unknown numbers right now.
There's a lot of assumptions, and I'd have to agree. You have to assume the 5 towns are even gonna agree to add a town, right, or a city. It would benefit the communities here on the numbers to do that, but that's no guarantee either. The towns could say, go pound sand, right?
Right, exactly.
And now you're stuck. So But a few years ago, Michael, you presented to the finance committee in Barry, and you said that there would be, a district model would potentially lead to increase of operational costs to the 5 towns.
There would be a possibility.
And so, since it's a lot of hypotheticals here, a hypothetical that it's 5 towns district model, how does that affect OpEx, right? Especially in the interim for the 2 years before other communities are brought on board.
Yeah, so there's a couple of things that, well, really, it's just two major things that we've discussed and is included in your draft district budgets that were also shared a couple weeks ago. The appointment of a district treasurer and the appointment of a district accountant. Now, we've discussed this at the administrator level, and we believe that we can, we don't have to, go and identify a new candidate. We all have treasurers and accountants in each of our communities. So, whether it's appointing, I'm gonna pick on the town accountant from Rutland that's here, appointing Donna, our wonderful accountant, to also be the district accountant. We've also had discussions possibly with the town of Hubbardston, maybe they can serve as the district treasurer. So that would be a decision looking at the budget, right? And, can we, for example, reduce maybe the assessment of Hubbardston, for example, by serving as the district treasurer? So that would be, I think, maybe discussed at the board of directors level. But in terms of increasing staffing or services, the costs are already allocated. We already have indirect costs associated in your current assessments now, whether it's for benefits, health, facility fixed costs. Pretty much all of our indirect costs we have associated you're already being charged for. So you wouldn't see those increases. Is there anything else in your budget right now?
Yeah, I think you hit everything, yeah, and.
So, so we didn't, when putting together the district budget, and this was, presented obviously when we were talking about this model, there weren't substantial increases. Probably, I think what has been feared over the few years, we're gonna have to hire all of these people to manage this district. I think we're already sort of doing that, the way that the current assessment model is levied onto each of you, so.
So I have a tremendous respect for the town of Warren, and I enjoy having more towns better, but from where we're sitting right now, the town of Hubbardston had no say in bringing in an additional town. We're told that our assessment was going to go down, and the additional town was brought in. So whatever happens with service levels happens with service levels, and our assessment went up exponentially. So there's that happening currently. And by being a district, at least we get a vote. Like, that's kind of where I am and what I'm going to be bringing to the select board in Hubbardston. Right now, we're at the will of the Rutland Select Board for whatever they want to do, and that's really not fair. Like, looking at the future is the decision would be made by the communities at the table. Right now, whatever the Rutland Select Board wanted to do, they can do. With a tremendous amount of respect, Madam Chair, thank you for having us. But yeah.
So we need to become a district before, and then if we decide not to take on another town, you don't have to. But now we gotta start paying rent for the building we rent from them.
We already do.
Town of Rutland. So we already do?
Yes, you already do.
That's a no cost.
Yeah,
So it's already figured into what we pay.
So, yeah.
But you can't do anything without coming to district first.
correct, and like he just mentioned, these 6 communities, that's up to you guys to decide if you want them to come in. Yes, I will produce the potential staffing needed, the costs and all that, and present that to the board of directors. And then ultimately, it's up to the board of directors to make that decision on whether or not you want them to come in and accrue those costs. So that's ultimately up to you guys.
I mean, I've been fighting since when we started that IMA, 3 years ago, that
Correct.
IMA thing?
Yep.
I mean, I was pushing transparency. I had no say on what a union contract was going out, you know what I mean, for raises or whatever. We had no say as a town. Everything fell on them, and I brought that up at that point. You know what I mean? So I want a say on what goes on, not me personally, but as a town. And that's all I'm looking at.
Plus, I mean, I think it will also, if you went to this district model, it opens up the door for opportunities with the state, with the little money, the money piece, which I think is important.
Agreed.
So I believe in front of us, we have 2 options. One is do nothing.
Yep.
And just be the same.
Have no say.
The other option is having them become a district, and what that, the potential I see is that allows them to ask for money.
Them or us as a district? You mean us as a district?
Well,
Us as a district, right?
but we are, now you have options to get grants. Right now, you don't have.
No, it opens them up.
Opens them up for further additional funding on top of those
You become more
grants.
attractive to towns joining, which then opens you up for additional funding. Correct.
So now you get 5 letters of intent, hey, you go to them, they say, we're looking at money, what's the possibility for grants? Can we expand?
If I understand correctly, the board of directors or the governance structure would then also say, be able to do the cost benefit analysis as new communities are coming forward, and the member towns could say, hey, this community doesn't make financial sense for us as a district, or we need to advocate for more state funding because of A, B, and C or whatever. And so that puts it all on all of us individually to come together and have a say in that versus.
Correct.
And as a person who would be on that board, I can state that if I didn't go to my 5 appointing authority members with what I was thinking about, I'd be in for a world of hurt if I still worked in that world. Like, so there's going to be accountability. I know several of the communities around here are either have outgoing TAs or are looking for a TA, but it's going to be a voice of the select boards at this table. I can't go into this meeting, go rogue, and then expect to have my next evaluation go well. Like,
Next.
What's the downside? I mean, this whole picture's been upside possibilities. There has to be a downside.
Yeah, wanna know what it is? The weeping of loss of local control. It really is hard for people to let it go. I've worked in regional school districts that have been in business.
We had that problem when we joined this, so
Yeah, well,
that's
no.
over.
Well, you think it's over.
But now you'll have a say, though.
You think it's over.
You have, right now, you have local
Right, no, but
control, but
Right
no
now, if these
say.
5 towns, these 7 towns come to Rutland and say we want to join, Rutland has the sole say to say yes or no.
Yeah, that's-
But
yeah.
now, as the district,
Rest
or
gives us
then as
a
a
little more
district, you'll have
control,
more to
yeah.
say, correct.
Point taken, yeah.
So it's quite the opposite, it's actually, you're getting more of a say.
in the same sentiment as I just said, I would hope that they wouldn't because they would lose members relatively quickly, but
You just have to have, I don't know what the clause is for getting out of the district.
It's 2 years. There.
2 years?
easier than the school
Unless
district.
Amen to that.
And cheaper.
Could you speak a little bit louder about that? So what, since we haven't seen the district model, to get out of it, because it doesn't work, how long does it take to get out? 2 years, and then a vote of what?
It's you, if you're a community and you'd like to leave, you give 2 years' notice, unless there's a unanimous vote of the board to let you leave sooner. So you have to give 2 years' notice, still pay for 2 years, and then you're out.
Okay, but if the
Unless you get
town,
that vote.
Unless you get that
unanimous
vote.
okay.
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Can state 911 speak to, when you leave and no one's looking to leave anything, but when you look to leave a school district, there's an OPEB liability and it's a substantial OPEB liability. Would that be something that would hit in this situation as well?
So for a community to leave an existing regional center, you're right, there has to be a clear public safety risk defined to the state 911 department. If you just say, oh, I don't like the assessment went up, or I just don't like Mike's haircut today, that's not the reason. You need a clear public safety risk or reason to move. Also, through the regionalization development, through the grants and through the initiative, it's not to increase the number of PSAPs. So if you were to, I'm sorry, what town are you with, ma'am?
I'm in Rutland.
Rutland, okay, so, if, aside from Rutland, if another community were looking to leave, you wouldn't get your PSAP back, you wouldn't get your 911 back. Now, it'd be one thing if you're looking to join a different regional in the area, but for, again, through the CMR, through the legislation, the director of the state 911 department has the say where 911 calls are kind of routed. So our department ultimately has the say of how the 911 system works.
So in
as
other
far
words,
as,
that 2 years really means nothing. It's like the regional school district. You're stuck. Once you sign, you're stuck.
not with the town itself, because you can go to an additional one, or if you have that clear defined public safety risk.
But we can't go back to being our own.
Correct.
Okay,
So,
so that's,
is there an easy mechanism, I mean, say
want to.
we're in
I don't know.
this
We're
district,
saving so much money, how can you even think about
look at
it?
how they said
say
that.
we're in this
how much-
district and now because we're
It's
in
not a
Warren, we
school
wanna
district.
move
This is
into the,
absolutely
you know, the
completely
Palmer,
different than a school
Brimfield,
district.
Wales
Now.
district. Is there an easy way to do that? Since we're going from one district to another.
Again, it has to be
as
that
opposed
clear
just-
public safety, right, that
Okay.
clear definitive public safety risk. And if you're going from one regional to another, because the incentive, I think, in the goal of that, the intent of that is to not have kind of regional shop where, oh, this one is gonna offer me a lower assessment, or this one's gonna offer me whatever the situation is. And that's the intent of that. Because at the end of the day, public safety needs to be paramount with anything, whether the communities are joining, whether you're changing to a district, whether you're continuing your service. Public safety is the sole entity and the sole object of regionalization, and it needs to be kept in mind. So it's not necessarily, oh, this is gonna be $1,000 cheaper, or there are different funding mechanisms. So that's kind of why the intent of that clear public safety risk needs to be defined.
And what is it that you need from us for the towns tonight?
We don't need anything tonight. Tonight was just an informational session. After drafting the agreement, we felt it important to share this with each of the select boards. So, I think it's my intent to bring it to my board at our next meeting to see if they're willing to adopt the language that you see here. Sounds like Hubbardston is hoping to do that on Monday. But it's ultimately your decision. And if you have more questions or you need additional presentations, I'm sure, Mike would be happy to join your meetings and provide that information. But, we intend on moving forward at our level, and it sounds like Hubbardston will as well.
So all towns have to say yes to move forward.
Correct.
5 of 5.
5 of 5. Okay.
So I have two things. First of all, I wanna know if our public safety people have any questions about it. Since they're the ones using the service, we're just sitting here deciding where it goes. But I know we have representatives from our town, our police chief for Warren, fire chief for Warren, and our emergency management person are all here. Do you guys have any concerns about this?
Adam Lavoy, Fire Chief in Warren. First, I'd just like to say that I think Rutland has done a really great job. I mean, working with Mike and Liz is very easy for us, and it's been a great, tremendous upgrade for us to have joined the regional district. So for that, and I think, I don't wanna speak for the other towns, but I think we've all gained from joining in there. The only thing I'd ask for you guys to speak of to the administrative side of things is I don't want to use the word concern, but technology. Can you speak to the fact of what happens to the towers? They're now district asterisks. They're not owned by the towns. It's not a town of Rutland tower, it's a district tower. Can you speak to how it works with, the district decides to change frequencies, to do, to adopt other towns, it's all of a sudden it's an 800. Can the 911 speak to how that happens? Because I guess the only concern that we have is that, again, we just upgraded our entire system. Is that system gonna be obsolete? It sounds like 911 picks up a big tab for the building, but what happens to the technology? And I guess that, if you could speak to that a little bit.
So I can answer on because this was a question that was raised by your town administrator. So, all of the property that was grant funded, would transition over to the district. However, it's our understanding that the town of Warren, you upgraded all of your radio equipment with your own funds. That would remain your personal property, unless you decide to sell it to the district. But that would remain your personal property, and that is explicitly listed. Yeah, yeah. $1. No, I'm kidding. So that was explicit, and we made sure to include that in the language. But anything, so for example, the Hubbardston cell tower that was constructed, that was funded by development grant funds, that would transfer over to the district. So that was very important, and we, made sure that was included. And then Mike, you want to?
Sell RFP?
What's that?
That's not.
Yeah, district. And Mike can speak on the technology component.
Yeah, and like you said, your equipment stays your equipment. Technology, again, that would be a form in this district. Acquiring 6 communities does open us up to that development grant, puts us up on a higher priority to further develop and improve our technology across the district. So in my opinion, I think this is the best option for the 5 communities to reduce assessments. That's the only way currently right now, not forming a district. like, I can't remember who said it, but assessments are gonna continue to go up, costs are going up. The only revenue source to offset these assessments is to become a district, acquire new communities, and obtain additional funding from the state 911 department to offset those costs. So that's my opinion for the group. Does that answer everything?
Yeah, again, I have no complaints with Rutland whatsoever. We've benefited tremendously from that, and it's a great relationship that we have. I think just the concern would be, how does that work if all of a sudden 911 comes in and says, you know what, guys, in order to do this, we need to move to an 800 system. We need to do this, we need to do that. I just want to make sure that all of a sudden that doesn't become, hey, oh, by the way, you got to upgrade your equipment to 800 now at a cost to the town. So that's what I'm trying to get someone to speak to, so that it can reassure the administrative staff that's here that they're not going to be left holding the bag 3 years from now with an incomplete system upgrade that they're responsible for.
Well, and again, I think through the district agreement itself, now you, as a chief, are gonna have a say on the operations board. Again, I don't know if you currently do through the, it's a quasi, I believe, right?
Yeah, we do have operational meetings.
So when those discussions do occur, you're gonna have a say, and ultimately you're gonna have a say to your town to say, hey, don't agree to this, or whatever the situation is. Again, more of an input to it.
So, yeah, the district would dictate how the radio system would work, the upgrades to the system. If we want to move to an 800, the operations committee is ultimately going to make that decision and forward it up to the administrators to make that final decision. So it's not.
Just change, right?
What's that? Yeah, we just did, and again, I just wanted to clarify that, if there was a vote by the board to make a change to technology, and there was one or two towns that were left out because they don't have the ability to do that, does that funding mechanism then come in from 911?
Sure, there is the funding mechanism for equipment, absolutely.
No, we already, Jerry Millette, Chief of Police Warren. We had met before and you answered a lot of questions for us, and that was one that we had. Obviously, looking forward, each town here is looking for the assessments to go down, and this seems to be the only way that's gonna happen. Forward thinking.
And I believe, James, do you want us?
Oh, you guys answered pretty much all my questions.
So, of course, I have another question. So this is how I get my head wrapped around things. So you just upgraded your radios to be compatible with the system you're on now?
Correct. Well,
Okay.
to make it
So-
finally work, yes.
To make it work properly
Correct.
through the 911 system or what are your communications? So how much room do we have in the frequency we're on now? Is there, I mean, it must only handle so many radios calling in or whatever.
No, that
doesn't.
part is not,
So
no. It's not
the
limited.
system we're on now, frequency, whatever we're at, I
So-
don't know. I'm
so
not.
So they're bands, we're UHF,
Okay.
Warren is actually VHF, two
So
different bands.
VHF has no problem communicating.
They don't talk to each other, so they're on their currently right now, they're on their separate radio frequency. So in our center, we have a regional police frequency, one frequency, that the four communities, Rutland, Berry, Oakham, and Hubbardston, all operate on. So all the officers on duty operate on that one frequency. Then we have a Warren police frequency where they just operate on.
So if we get the 5 votes to move forward and put it to our people in town, and they agree to it, let's say now you have 7 towns wanna come in, where would you be at electronically with radios and everything else?
So again, we're doing analysis of these communities, see how they're currently operating, how many channels they're currently operating on. And my opinion and my suggestion to these communities is going to not by regionalize and then consolidate, but to regionalize. So regionalize those frequencies, and again, we have to look at the community, see the call volume to see what actually works correctly. And take like Auburn, Spencer, and let's just say Charlton per se, and regionalize their frequency, so those 3 operate on that one frequency.
Okay, so
And
you
then
have
take
3
the
towns.
others, so we would have 3
You
main
have 3 different
frequencies.
things coming in, you have one coming in from 3 towns.
Correct.
But it's not the same as I would love this is a shameless plug, I would love a shared accountant, but I can only work with people that have VADAR. That's not the same in terms of radio frequency or anything
No,
like
so
that?
bands only communicate with certain bands. UHF only talks to UHF unless you buy specialized equipment in the background to cross repeat over different frequencies. That's a lot more money.
So-
Not needed. So these communities that we're currently speaking to are all VHF.
High. So currently, right now, similar to like New Braintree Dispatch, they operate on one open repeated channel. So the towns, the Brookfields, Holland, Brimfield, Wales, they all operate on one channel, similar to what the four towns here do. We're the kind of the oddball community in the sense that we have our own VHF frequency. What the director is saying, basically, if there were other VHF towns that were to come in, just for an example, our frequency could then become the open VHF frequency for other towns to join in. There would be a regionalized VHF frequency.
And that would only come in as one.
Yeah, I mean,
to
if
this.
then down the road, if they built out the system even further and decided they wanted to go all UHF or all 800 or all VHF or whatever they decided to do, they'd have to upgrade the system, and each individual town would have to have the technology to do that, because right now they can't talk amongst each other without cross-banding, and all that other stuff. So, so I understand that I was just, I just more wanted to, we've already had these discussions, like, I knew what the answers were gonna be, but I thought it was important for everyone else in the room to hear that as well, how that works.
So Mike, or if the chief has the answer, without massive investment, how many more communities can fit on, say, the frequency that the four towns are on?
So it's ultimately, you gotta factor in responder safety, obviously. So there's only so much a certain person can handle, and I believe, just trying to think if I included it in my budget this year. I don't think I did, but I'll send out the study that we already did. It's called ABGO Retains. It's a national study that's done across the nation, and they put together what's safe for a telecommunicator to handle. And some of those studies stated one telecommunicator can handle 3 primary channels. With that being said, that's limited to either, I believe it's 16 or 18 officers, managing 16 to 18 officers, one telecommunicator. Fire, it's a little bit less because those calls are prolonged longer, and I believe that's down to 11 per telecommunicator. So you have to factor all that in. The frequency itself can handle as many as possible. Like the chief was just saying, C8 is comprised of 10 communities. They're all on one channel. They have multiple operations channels that they can switch over to. So if it's gonna be a prolonged incident, they're being dispatched out on that main one, and then they're saying, hey, Brimfield, switch to Ops 1. And then they manage on that. So it doesn't clog that main frequency, making it hard for the other 9 communities to talk on the frequency. So that's currently, if we were to become a district, bring on those 6, that's kind of the model we'd be looking at. We'd have 3 primary channels and split all the communities up onto 3 primary and have multiple operations channels, upward to 10 to 15 operations channels. And again, the licensing is not a problem because all these communities have multiple channels, ranging from 2 to 6 different licenses for radio frequencies. Again, a lot of that equipment's already in place. It's just linking everything together, simulcasting it. So a lot of the infrastructure's already there. There will be some improvements needed, but a lot of that infrastructure's already in place. It's just, how do we want to manage it, and how does the operations want to manage it, moving forward from there.
And to add on to what he said, we're gonna look at what makes sense. So what towns, like Warren doesn't really make sense to have them come on to our regional frequency. But from a police standpoint, if there's an erratic, which we get pursuits all the time, like from Gardner into Hubbardston, and Rutland and Oakham are already, waiting at their town lines, Barry, like everyone comes to help because they can hear what's going on. Wouldn't make sense for Warren to be on that frequency because they're not like a neighboring town. So as we take on, if we get other towns, we're gonna have to look at, what makes sense, who do they work with the most? How busy are they? Not just like on paper, a dispatch, one person can handle 16 officers, but if they have 16 officers that, and 8 of them just pull car over, when there's an incident, it's gonna put a lot more on that dispatcher. Could be safety issues. So there's a lot of things that are gonna go into figuring out who makes sense on what channels. And to have all towns have their own channels doesn't make sense, because to have, one person try to monitor 8 different channels is a safety hazard itself.
Go ahead, sir.
Jim McCann, the emergency management. Just thinking as a large scale incident, large scale happening, your dispatch center goes down, frequencies, multiple frequencies go down. You have plans to, or what's the
Yep.
plan for that? 'Cause
Yeah, so-
we've had ice storms back. I remember Rutland had 3 inches of ice that
Yeah.
destroyed their town. We
So-
had nothing down in Warren. Just that kind of.
Yeah, so, talking about that, with this process, if we were to build a district, build a facility, get this large, we would look at relocating who our secondary is, depending on, currently, right now, it's Neshoba. But we would align with another regional center that could acquire us in the case of an incident like that. If we lose power or something happens to that building that we need to get out of there, what other center has the physical space for us to come, sit down, and continue operations? We would partner with them through the state to fund the interoperability portion of that so that we could log into our CAD over there. Currently, right now, 911, we could go to any PSAP in Massachusetts right now and start taking the 911 calls if something happened here. So that's already an option right now. But our CAD system and radio, we would build that out with our secondary center. And like SEMREC is, I believe, connected to, what's the other one? Holbrook, connected to Holbrook. So that's their full secondary. They can go over there, log into everything completely and continue operations, and same with Holbrook. Holbrook can go to SEMREC, sit down and continue operations. So that would be part of that whole planning process if we were to acquire 6 communities of that size. That would be part of that entire plan.
And that's actually a requirement from the state 911 department to have a continuity of operations plan. Because you're right, as you continue to grow these operations, God forbid something happens, you want to have those
Yeah.
plans in place. So, right, they're already in effect, already in place as requirements, so.
Any other questions?
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for hosting and for doing all this work.
Thank you for everybody coming. Do you have anything else? No?
So do we need to know if they all wanna do it before you put it to a vote in your towns, or what is?
No, they take care of their stuff now. So we'll take this time.
So Warren, yeah, we just wanna let you know that we're ready to make a commitment. We're in.
We appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you.
Just don't do us wrong.
Will not.
Thank you, Hubbardston, for kind of bringing it to the attention of, and
Thank you. Second, thank you.